Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi. With me is Armin Navabi. He already said hi. We talked recently about the one thing that's going on that everybody's talking about right now is the withdrawal of the US from Afghanistan. 20-year war, $2 trillion, thousands of troops dead, even more, tens of thousands of civilians dead. I mean, it's just been a tremendous cost, and they withdrew. And recently about it, and we were talking about, like, whether this could have been done any different. Yes, of course it could have been done a different way, but it was always going to be a problem. That was basically the idea. Then the bombing happened, right? ISISK carried out.
Ali, let's just say it like other people do, because it seems like YouTube has removed the sensitivity to this because so many people are saying it. So just say ISISK.
This is the first time I said ISIS, and then I just got screwed. So the moment I correct myself. Okay, anyway, YouTube, right? So ISIS Khorasan, ISIS K has now, and this is a rival group to the Taliban. They came in and they just bombed, and they killed a whole bunch of a dozen American soldiers. They killed many Afghan civilians as well. And this sort of changed everything. Now this is something that Joe Biden had to own. Got a lot of criticism for it because it's something that they knew about. Biden himself said there's a high risk event that we're trying to prevent from happening, and apparently they couldn't. So a lot of things have gotten more complicated. People are, obviously the Republicans are saying, Biden should be impeached. And there's just a lot more criticism. The whole situation has somewhat changed, but has it? And that's the question. I think that's what we're going to talk about. What happens now? The U.S. is finally out of Afghanistan. Like, everybody's out. All the troops are out now. And now there are these rival Islamic militant groups. There's the Taliban, who are in power. There's Al-Qaeda and the remnants of Al-Qaeda who are with the Taliban. They're in alliance with them. And then there's ISIS-K, which is a separate entity that is actually they're rivals to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. They're not in line with them. So there's a lot going on.
You forgot one of them, another group, the Northern Alliance.
The Northern Alliance, yes.
The King of the North. How's that
going? King of the North, that's what you call him. So this is that now. So Armin, before, right, when you had the U.S. there and you had this sort of like weird makeshift government that really wasn't, I guess, much of a government. Now we know. Holding out, they had this sort of like iron fist, I guess, that was keeping all of the ingredients under bay, like at bay, right? So now the whole thing has just come loose, right? So what do you think is going to? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what the interplay will be between these different groups. But how has this changed? Like, in terms of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, does it change things? The perspective that we had last time?
Actually it makes it seem like more of a good idea that United States left, because it seemed like this was all being held by Scotch tape. Mm-hmm. And given how everything fell apart as soon as you removed it, doesn't seem like anything else would have been able to hold it together, no matter how much time spent there. So it just made it, a lot of people seem to have come out with the wrong message. They were like, oh, this means that we shouldn't left. I was like, this seems like it didn't matter when you like, to me, it made it more obvious that it didn't really matter when you left. There's nothing that could have held this together, so you might as well left 10 years ago. Or even never came in to begin with. Actually, like, a lot of people say, like, what, the original reason why we came to Afghanistan was good, but as soon as we killed bin Laden, then we should have left. I was like, yeah, you killed bin Laden in Pakistan. Which also shows that the whole idea of like coming to Afghanistan in this way to tackle, like, to get bin Laden, that whole mess was unnecessary. Like, you should have come to Afghanistan to take out bin Laden the same way you took him out in Pakistan, not with this whole mess, right? Anyways, that's a different discussion, because I want to keep it true to the title of this episode, which is The Future of Afghanistan. I want to kind of like us touch upon all the things that will affect the future of Afghanistan as much as we can. Okay, so it's going to be less of a prediction, but more of things to look for and things that could affect the future of Afghanistan, because predictions, as we have seen, are impossible, but the factors at play, touching on them and coming up with what could affect the future of Afghanistan in what way, I think that's a more useful way of looking at it, rather than coming up with determined predictions, right? And the main place we need to look at first, I think, is Taliban, and then we could look at ISIS-K and maybe the Northern Alliance and the other elements, and then we could look at when we're talking about the future of Afghanistan, what are we looking at? What do we mean by the future of Afghanistan? Look at it from like what I think is 3 different perspectives. But if we want to start with the Taliban itself, right, and the relationship they have with all these other groups that exist and might like grow either under the label that we're seeing or under new labels, how is that going to affect Taliban, and how is that going to affect the nature of how they operate and what their goals are? Okay, because a lot of people keep making statements about Taliban as if this is like a completely like unanimous group of people with like the same ideology, with the same goals, and with this unchanging nature and goal. And this is like, I think it's very inaccurate. It's, I think a lot of people think like, oh, if you think this about Taliban, then you're naive because Taliban is like this, right? But I think they are the ones who are being naive, because the Taliban from one province is different from the Taliban from even the Taliban in Kabul. Like, if you talk to them, you're going to get a different reaction from some of them to some other members from other members. But also, you can see their attitudes and their strategies changing in time. And some of them like this change and some of them don't like this change. But so you can't just come up and paint the whole thing with one broad brush and not treat it as if it's not fluid. It is a lot more fluid. There are some things that are probably never going to change, like, the nature, the fact that they are extremely Islamist and they're extremely conservative. Obviously, those things are not going to change. That they are they lack, when it comes to human rights, women's rights, gay rights, trans rights, all that stuff, we know that they're going to be, the standards are very low there. Those things are not going to change. But there are many other things about them that are going to be fluid. But which direction they're going to go is going to be dependent on so many factors. And this ISIS-K factor is actually a very good way to like examine that, right? Because I think the 2 main, like, if you want to simplify this and look at which direction Taliban is going to go to, the way a lot of people have described it is, are they going to be pragmatic or are they going to be ideological, right? And a lot of us claim that it makes sense for them to be more pragmatic rather than ideological, because a lot of people think that a group like Taliban is so loyal to their Islamic viewpoint that they're never going to sacrifice anything. But a lot of us who study a lot of these groups and look at what they do, it seems like their survival and their access to power actually takes priority over everything else. And these Islamic values are often used as a tool rather than an actual goal. So, but then if that's the case, then why do they not go full on pragmatic, rather than like, why do they even hang on to anything ideological if it's against their interests? Because I think like when they keep on these, when they become more ideological and they become more radical, that's actually also pragmatic. Because if you look at ISIS-K, right? What is ISIS-K? ISIS-K is very similar to Taliban in the sense that they are.
Well, it's sorry to interrupt. Yeah, it's an outgrowth of the Pakistani Taliban.
That's what
right? I mean,
no, both. Mm-hmm. It's a mix of Pakistani Taliban and Afghani Pakistan, right? Mm-hmm. But they're also if I say they're mostly passionate, it's not like we don't care about people's ethnicity, but people like this is not just Islamic, right? When it comes to Afghanistan, these groups, their ethnicity matters a lot, right? Like this is a major part of their identity. It's not just Islam; it's also their tribe that they belong to. For example, the Northern Alliance is like mostly, I think, a Tajik group, right? So this is not just a battle between ideologies. This is also a battle between different ethnic groups. But the thing is that ISIS-K is mostly Pashtun, just like the Taliban, right? So the loyalties seem to be like these groups shouldn't be against each other if ethnic loyalties matter, but they are very much against each other because ideologically they're very much the opposite of each other, right? And the reason why groups like ISIS-K might become popular, and again in the past couple of years they have lost a lot of their members, is because of the compromises that the Taliban is making, right? Like that, and this is why there's a limit for Taliban on how much compromises it can make when it comes to human rights, when it comes to becoming legitimate internationally, when it comes to women's rights, human rights, because a lot of people don't understand. It is in their best interest economically to make those compromises, but they will lose members if they do so too much, right? ISIS-K members are former Taliban members who think that the Taliban are apostates,
or capitulating.
No, but not just like these are not Muslims who are making the wrong decisions. They're literally apostates because of them working with the Americans, because of them making a deal with Americans, like even signing an agreement with Americans and making compromises with Americans. Worse than that, Ali, worse than that, reaching out to Shias, right? The fact that the Taliban has reached out to Shia communities and instead of massacring them has made a lot of former Taliban members to consider the Taliban not Muslim anymore, right? Like they're ex-Muslim in their eyes. Like I think maybe we should invite the Taliban in our ex-Muslim groups now because of that. They are, according to ISIS-K, Taliban is ex-Muslim now because they are apostates, right? So this is, you go on.
Oh no! So sorry, I was going to say one of the really interesting things that I found happened is, last week this news broke that the Biden administration had given the Taliban a whole list of Americans and permanent residents that they wanted to get out of Afghanistan safely. Like they'd given this list to the Taliban, and everybody was freaking like this is the dumbest thing ever. But Ayaan Hirsi Ali said this is beyond moronic. Everybody's talking about it. It turns out this week we found out that the Taliban actually secretly helped these Americans get out. So they had a deal. Like the government actually had a deal, and the Taliban. It came out that the Taliban was helping Americans safely come to the Kabul airport and get evacuated. So I don't think that's going to play very well with the ISIS-K people either. Like they're actually helping the Americans get out. I mean, that's egregious. That's like an acute situation.
But this is exactly, I mean, what we should have expected, because as soon as Taliban comes into power, like a lot of people think that Taliban would not have any interest into becoming more pragmatic rather than ideological. But there are two competing interests here. There is a lot of interest for, like, there is some force that is influencing Taliban to become more pragmatic rather than ideological, because there's a lot of money here at play. Okay, people think like Taliban would not care about international recognition. Taliban desperately needs some form of international recognition right now because there's a lot of money at play. There's a lot of trade. There's a lot of money that is frozen. There's a lot of international aid that wouldn't flow into Afghanistan. And, it's going to be, Taliban doesn't have much experience in managing a country.
Yeah, they're running a country. That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and they know that. It's going to be extremely difficult for them to be able to manage the borders, keep trade flowing in without that international recognition. And they need to be somehow convince the world that they're going to be able to maintain stability in Afghanistan. And yeah, we're still going to abuse women's rights and stuff. Of course, we're the Taliban, but it's not going to be as bad as 20 years ago. Like they want to be women, maybe, I don't know. Okay. Like maybe say women can go to school, but unlike under the previous regime, it needs to be separate from men and they need to be in full hijab. Okay. It's not going to be like before that they couldn't study at all, but there's going to be some limitation, but still better. Okay, like they want again, and this is going to be ISIS-K. Like, this is not why we joined. Like, the people, and this is going to be great marketing for ISIS-K members, because a lot of Taliban members are like, "What the hell are we doing? This is not the Taliban I joined." Right? So.
You know, I was saying the West generally eats this stuff up, so they know. I think they know. Like when Saudi Arabia, remember when they said like 3 or 4 years ago that we're going to allow women to drive? I mean, this is something that should have been okay 50 years ago, and they were 50 years too late. But they said we're going to allow women to drive, and everybody in the U.S. and in Europe was saying, "Oh wow, you know, this new guy is so progressive. He's progressive. He's allowing women to drive." So the bar is very low. The Taliban, they only have to do one or two superficial things and give them one or two things that they didn't before. They're only going to be judged by how bad they were before.
But it's going to be very hard game to play for Taliban. Like, it's, again, the Taliban might be pushed into actually becoming more radical because of this illusion, you know, of its members, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the threat of groups like ISIS-K and the fact that their members might actually start growing. The Taliban is going to feel limited in how much they're going to be able to go on the pragmatic side, right? It's kind of you know, contradictory, because sticking on the ideological side actually might be the pragmatic thing to do, right? So that you don't lose a lot of, like, you know, the people who are at the top of Taliban, they might have these plans and stuff like about becoming a little bit more lenient, but again, they are, you know, you could see the previous government, like Afghan's army, one reason why they lost so easily, and the reason why there was no resistance, is because of the disillusion that existed within the soldiers, literally, you know, compared to the commanders, the warlord, like the people that the soldiers, the Afghan soldiers were supposed to follow. They were like, these people are corrupt, these people don't have any our interests at heart, and blah blah blah. So they didn't fight. They gave up. A lot of them gave up. Not all of them, but a lot of them gave up. The same thing could happen with Taliban. If the Taliban keeps like, "Oh yeah, we're like pro women now, and like women can study, and we're gonna make deals with the Europeans and the Americans, and you know, blah blah blah, and all of this stuff," and like, and worst of all, we're gonna actually not massacre the Shias, and we might even protect them. A lot of Talibans might be like, "Okay, so we're selling our, now that we're in power, like this wasn't about Islam. Now that we're in power, it was all about power. We're selling our soul to the devil, and this is not what the victory was supposed to be about." And they're going to join. Oh, another difference between the ISIS. There's going to be relationship with Iran. Okay, a lot of Taliban members are going to hate that. The fact that the heads of Taliban today went to Tehran. They had friendly conversations with the Islamic Republic of Iran. A lot of Taliban members are going to hate that, right? Another thing that is very different between ISIS-K and the Taliban is the fact that Taliban is very nationalist. Like, Taliban is about Afghanistan. Okay, ISIS-K doesn't recognize borders. ISIS-K is like, this is a second attempt at the caliphate, right? The first attempt was in Iraq and Syria. That failed. This is now a second attempt in Khorasan, right? But Khorasan is not the limit. This is like the eventual goal is the entire planet, right? And one thing we have to recognize, Eli, is that the ISIS-K is a very small group right now, very small group. Like the reason why we're talking about it is because what it could become, because the initial bombing that they did, that was like their best marketing campaign they could have had. Like, they had a small window of opportunity to make themselves as the brand to unite under, as this new, like, right now that the Taliban is going to go pragmatic, we're going to be the people who are going to be truly Islamic. Like, there might have been multiple groups, but ISIS-K is like, "Hey, we're here. Like, anybody, hello, like, this is our rallying cry." So they had a very small window of opportunity to like take advantage of, to send a signal to all the jihadis, like, "Hey, jihadis, unite." And they did it, and now they're like, everybody's talking about them, which is fantastic marketing for them, right? So they as of right now, they're going to be the brand to unite under, and this is actually very scary for the Taliban, right? And also for Iran and China, okay? Because I don't know if you last time checked. Hey, when I was like, I didn't, for many years, I didn't know Khorasan was anything other than a province in Iran. Because as an Iranian, every time somebody said Khorasan, I was like, "Oh, that's a province in my country," right? But then I realized, like, no, the reason why that province in Iran is called Khorasan is because it's a part of a bigger Khorasan, right? And that Khorasan, which is ISIS-K, is like ISIS Khorasan, is partly in Iran, partly in Pakistan, partly in Tajikistan, partly in Turkmenistan, partly in Uzbekistan, and partly in Afghanistan, of course, and also, Ali, partly in China. Okay.
Oh, really?
That's the scary part. Okay. This is why China is like, Taliban, you need to better get a hold of this situation. Like, this is scary. And also, another thing that we're going to talk about later is that Uyghur Muslims who are joining these groups. Okay. This is extremely scary. So Afghanistan is now becoming a place where jihadis all around the world are realizing that, oh, this is a place that America has promised that they're not going to return to. Like, we have the guarantee that this is a place that America is not going to return to. Like, this is the best place, a place with a government that is not as strong. It's still the Taliban. This is a weak government with not enough money, and a place that United States has promised the world that they're not going to go back to. Like, where else? Like, okay, forget Syria and Iraq. This is where we have to start the caliphate. This is it. This is the place. And Uyghur Muslims are going to go there. Some Chechens are going to go there. People from Syria and Iraq are going to go there. Ex-Taliban members are going to go there. Some people who were part of the Haqqani network are going to go there. And this is going, a lot of people are predicting like this is their place now. This is going to be the place now. And it all depends on Taliban. The Taliban is against some people. I'm not, a lot of people think that this is like defending the Taliban, but it's not. It's against the interest of Taliban for this to work. The Taliban is now that Taliban is in Taliban's best interest right now to get stability in Afghanistan. Like, it was in the best interest to have chaos in Afghanistan when the Americans were there, but now that they're in charge, they have to signal to the world that they can bring stability to Afghanistan. And we're going to see what's going to happen. Anyways, you want to say something before?
No, I was going to actually point everybody to, we've had one of our previous guests who we had on this podcast, Graham Wood, has written an article in the Atlantic actually explaining ISIS-K. The article's called "What Does ISIS Want Now?" And he's talking about it in the context of the Kabul bombing and why they're opposed to the Taliban and how a lot of the things that Armin talked about. So that's just a good reference point if you want to learn more about ISIS-K and what they're all about.
Right.
So that's
but by the way, Ali, like when it comes to, when I say the Taliban is Pashtun and ISIS-K is also Pashtun, I don't know if people can understand how closely these people are related. Like, these people are each other's families, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could have like a father in Taliban and his son in ISIS-K, and they're fighting against each other, right? And some people are saying like, well, how closely, because they are so close with each other, like they're the same families, they say like they're married, these are families that are married with each other. Like, are they really enemies? Because it seems like maybe they're like, it's fluid. Maybe they're sometimes working with each other and sometimes fighting each other. My understanding is, and this might be inaccurate, but based on listening to certain experts, is like, no, the relationship is very black and white. Like, they are moral enemies. The fluidity of the nature between them is not that they are not enemies, it's that their members might hop between one another, right? Like, it's like you might have one day somebody thinking like, okay, I'm still Taliban even after all this, but after a week we're like, okay, you know what, I'm hopping over to ISIS-K. So that's the nature of the fluidity, that some people they might like exchange members every once in a while, but if you're in that group, like, no, you are anti-Taliban, you know what I mean? Like, that is my current understanding, right? But because there are so many conspiracy theories right now are all online, and I don't think most of them is like without any evidence. Like, people like, oh, maybe they're working with each other, blah blah blah. But unless we see any evidence, I don't think we should give any of that any validity.
So here is the interesting part of this. So we know for everything that happens in the Middle East, the U.S. is always like bounced around as to who they're going to be allies with, depending on who's fighting whom, and this happens all the time. So now, Joe Biden said in one of his press conferences, he said, quote, "It is in the interest of the Taliban that ISIS-K does not metastasize beyond what it is," end quote. Biden said that. So that's in the interest of the Taliban. Who else is it in the interest of that ISIS-K does not metastasize beyond what it is? It's in the U.S.'s interest. So
Iran, China, Pakistan.
Everybody. So, but like specifically, what's interesting about this is because the U.S. was leaving and the Taliban actually helped the U.S., helped all these Americans get to the airport safely, helped get them evacuated. The U.S. trusted the Taliban by giving them a list of people, Americans and permanent residents and foreign nationals who had to be evacuated. And the Taliban actually carried it out in secret. So the US and Taliban, like these people were fighting against each other for the last 20 years, now have a common alliance. They're working with each other. They had a negotiation last year with the Trump administration. They talked about things. Obviously, you can't trust the Taliban with carrying out its part of the deal. You can't really do that. But it's just interesting that when it comes to ISIS-K and what is to come in the future, because ISIS-K, like, what did they do with that bombing, the Kabul bombing, right? That first of all, they showed that that this isn't over. I mean, they killed American soldiers, 13 American soldiers, who went back, and they showed their power when it came to that, even though they're very small in number. And then they also basically sent a message to all of the rest of Afghanistan, that the people in Afghanistan, that, okay, this isn't over. Things are about to get really bad. They're about to get really bad even here, especially after the US leaves. Okay, and we're letting them go. They're leaving all bloodied up because of us, and at the same time, you guys better watch out, right? So they've achieved that. That's a good, as in that's a pretty strong show of power, right? And that's why everybody's concerned about it. But it has formed these alliances between the US and Taliban. Like they have common interests now in a lot of ways, and I don't know how that changes things.
So, okay, before I respond to that, I just want to say we see the questions in the live chat from our patrons. We will get back to we will get to those, and also the patron questions that we got on Patreon.
Right.
But I don't think trust is the right word to use here, because we're not like what's happening is not trusting them with their words, is like with their promises, because the Taliban has proven time and time again that they're not going to keep their promises if they don't have to. It's understanding what's in what's in their own best interest. It's like understanding what's best for the survival of Taliban and how would they operate. And I think that was an accurate calculation that the Taliban, because here's the thing, the Taliban had already drawn a red line for Americans to leave by the time that Trump had said that they're going to leave, and they didn't leave by then, and it looked very weak for Taliban for that red line to be crossed by America, and for the Taliban not to make America pay a heavy price for it. Like the Taliban had to they totally don't. We signed an agreement with Trump. If you stay past that red line, all hell will break loose, right? And Biden came in and like, okay, we're leaving on August 31st, which is a couple of months after Trump order. And Taliban was like, no, we signed an agreement with you. This is our red line. And that red line was passed, and Taliban really kind of ignored it. And there was the new red line. Is like, okay, this is a new red line, August 31st. Not a single day after that, right? And the Taliban would have looked really pathetic if they didn't start attacking America, and as they promised, if they didn't pass that red line, right? So it was in the best interest for Taliban, because they didn't want to start a conflict with America at that point, because they want to please Americans, leave by August 31st, so we don't have to start this, we don't have to may you have, because they wanted to have a full-on takeover. So it was best interest for the Taliban to make sure that the Americans can meet their August 31st deadline. So okay, how can we help you? Right? So it wasn't because they were now caring for Americans, or because all of
of course
grew a heart or anything. It was just that they wanted to make sure that a second red line wasn't being passed, and they didn't look pathetically weak. Because they right now they look very strong, and everybody is like, oh my God, Taliban strong, Taliban this made America look weak. So they want to keep writing that, and if America passed crossed another red line and they didn't do anything about it, it will go against that branding. Now their major concern is going to be ISIS-K, making them look like they're weak if they can, because it's one thing, Taliban is good at winning battles, especially, not winning battles, strategically winning battles by making sure that everybody understands that there's no use fighting, but they're not as good. I mean, they haven't shown to be that good at maintaining, managing a government, okay, unless they could manage it in the way that that you do in the Dark Ages. They're good at that, but anyways, in modern society, they don't know how to run that, and groups like ISIS-K is going to be a major challenge for them. Yeah, again, I understand that ISIS-K is a very small group. our concern is that that might change very soon, right? Because of how good, their marketing was right at on day one, right? They were like, hey guys,
the show of power was
we are the branding. This is like ISIS-K was almost completely wiped out in 2017, right? But especially like people remember that with the Moab, the mother of all bombs, like they were completely, they seemed like that was the end of them, right? And there's two reasons why they're back. One, Taliban opened all the prisons without doing any filtering. Like they didn't.
Yeah.
Right. So they weren't checking who's who when they opened the doors. Second is because of this attack that they just did on the airport. So even though they seemed like it was a group like that was never going to come back, now it seems like they might. Right? We don't know. Okay. So and again, that's going to be. Are they going to be successful at making Taliban look like this? Might be a short-term thing. We don't know. Like Taliban looks strong now, but ISIS, if ISIS-K manages to keep causing chaos all over Afghanistan, because here's the thing: a lot of people don't know. A lot of Afghans right now are welcoming a full-on Taliban takeover. Okay, because they think like this is the end. Not necessarily because some of them maybe they like Taliban. They're like, yes, finally Islamic regime or something. But a lot of them like this is just stop the war, right? So some of them who might not even like the Taliban, they're like, you know what? I hear so many women saying like, I'll put a burqa on. I don't care. Just stop the war, right? Like I hear a lot of people like that, right? I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong, but there's a lot of people who talk like that, right? But then a lot of people associate the Taliban takeover with less explosions. They're like, okay, less explosions, yay, no more war. But if ISIS-K might be like, psych, right? And a lot of Afghans are like, okay, the Taliban can't even give us security, right? Like if it's a difference between, if we have to give up our freedoms to get more security, a lot of Afghans are like, you know what, we're willing to make that trade. But if groups like ISIS-K manage to keep Afghanistan, like again, I don't know, maybe they can, maybe they are not. But then it would, if they manage to keep the chaos going, then people are not, the Taliban's popularity is going to drop like a rock. Ali, I see a lot of people actually saying like, I used to think that people in Kabul would be like, oh my God, our freedoms, our education is gone. And then people in the rural area saying like, yay, security, no more war. Like that's like a simplified dichotomy. I thought like that was going to be there. But now if you listen actually to people even in Kabul, people are like, oh, it's great. Now I could walk in the streets. Like women in Kabul, like again, I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm just saying these are also there, okay? There are women in Kabul are saying that I feel like I won't get harassed by men now if I walk in the streets of Kabul. Like I'm not saying if they're correct or I'm just saying these narratives also exist, right? There are people like, oh, I know like there's going to be less theft because under the previous regime, security was like crap. Like women thought like I would get harassed. Like I would always be afraid of getting harassed. But now I won't get harassed because of a Taliban takeover. Right?
There's a corruption thing too, right? I mean, the government there's a lot of corruption in the government as well.
Yeah. So for example, with corruption, one thing else that I saw is like under the previous regime, people say like the police constantly needed bribes for anything to happen, right? Every time you had to got stuck with the police, your life would be a living hell unless you managed to give them a bribe. They say with the Taliban, they give you a bribe receipt. So with the Taliban, you also have to give bribes, but they give you a bribe receipt so that no other Taliban could ever collect bribes from you because you already showed that you have a bribe. So they say with the Afghan police before the Taliban, you have to give bribes all the time, over and over and over again. But with the Taliban, you give bribe one time and then you get a receipt and you show it and then you never have to pay it again. So they're like, I'd rather pay it. Yeah,
that's so sad when you're like, okay, now I just have to bribe them once. And it's okay. And this is bliss. This is so much better than, oh, I'm in heaven. I only have to bribe them once. I have this receipt. It's like a, your VAX card, it helps you. Oh my God. Yeah. It's terrible. But you know what I meant by that whole trust thing, like before, is that when you have interests that are aligned, you can trust people with certain things. You don't trust them with anything, but for example, you can give them the list of all the Americans that have to be because you know that they're going to do that. You can trust them with that because you have a quid pro quo, right? So those kinds of things you can manage. But yeah, I think that this I'm just not. We talked about, like, in our Lebanon. Remember our Lebanon episode? We were talking about how Hezbollah can easily take over all of Lebanon, but it won't. Right? It won't do it because, once you do take over, you're not the group that everybody supports, and you become accountable because now you're in power. So all of the stuff that's going wrong, you have to take responsibility for that as well. You can't just pin it on somebody else because you are the government. So that is something I think the Taliban's going to struggle with, because now they are the government. They're in power. They're not just this group that is fighting the Americans on behalf of Afghanistan, right? They are now in control. So there are going to be problems. Obviously, there are going to be all kinds of problems. And those problems will now, people are going to eventually start pinning on the government, the Taliban. So they are going to undergo scrutiny. They are going to have accountability. And their opposition, like ISIS-K and some of these other groups, is going to get stronger. Like, it will get stronger. That's just the nature of how these things work. Because
it's going to make a lot of sense for the ISIS brand to just invest in Afghanistan more than Iraq and Syria right now, at least, right? Because there's a lot of other forces. Like, there are much heavier forces in in Iraq and Syria for ISIS to have to deal with, and they lost that battle over there, right? Here in Afghanistan, there's going to be a lot less resistance to them, and there's almost guarantee we don't know that America is not going to come back. So the conditions are like just perfect. There's weak government. This is the best place for the second shot at the caliphate, right? But the problem is that if we're talking about the future of Afghanistan, this goes beyond Afghanistan, the effects of this, right? This is going to have a spillover effect in the countries around it. And Afghanistan might become a perfect base for radicalism to grow, right? Especially if Taliban can't get its acts together, right? And also, but at the same time, Taliban might get a lot of aid from countries like Iran and China, because these are going to be the main countries, and also Pakistan, because these are going to be the countries that are going to be terrified about the spillover effect, right? So we talked about, the benefits to the Pakistan or the Islamic Republic of Iran and China, but there's a lot of cost right now with the Taliban takeover. These countries are also terrified. Like, these radical groups might be a threat to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Khorasan is the entire province in Iran. So we're saying ISIS Khorasan. What does that mean? Like, at the end, the ISIS Khorasan was created as a way to make this whole Khorasan the beginning of their caliphate. So that means, like, they would want to annex part of Iran, annex part of China, annex part of Pakistan. That's their goal, right? I'm not saying they will ever success. They will never be successful at that. But the mere fact that this is their original stated goal, right now it's less of that. Right now it's just Afghanistan. It means that they will, if ISIS-K is successful and it grows, their ultimate goal is to make attacks on these areas so that they could start Islamic radicalism growing in those places as well, so that they will be against all these governments, right? And they already have radicals there that are excited to join them if they become more popular, right? So because of, one hope that the Taliban has is getting a lot of aid from these countries, right? It would be in the best interest of Islamic Republic of Iran for the Taliban to be able to get a handle over this. It would be the best interest of Pakistan's government. It would be the best interest of China's government. So these governments might step ahead of everybody else to legitimize Taliban and to trade with the Taliban, so that Taliban gets enough finances to be able to maintain, to run the country, so that there's some stability there, right? Oh, by the way, another thing, Ali, that is very interesting that we should talk about, in what I hear about people in Kabul, is that some people are suggesting, again, I don't know if any of this is going to be true or not. I'm just reporting to you what some people are saying. Again, they're all, like, the reason why I'm not mentioning all the people who are scared, because I think a lot of people have heard that. Okay, so I'm not mentioning it because that's getting a lot of coverage. Like, a lot of people are scared. A lot of people don't know what the Taliban is going to do to them. A lot of people who work with Americans don't know if they're going to live. A lot of women are worried about their freedoms. All of that is there. I'm not denying all of that, but that gets so highlighted. So I'm just highlighting these other things that we haven't heard. Some people might not have heard. Some women are saying that women education might go up. Again, I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying this is what I'm hearing some people theorizing, which could be completely wrong, because they're suggesting that if the Taliban is actually true, and that's a big if, what they're saying is actually true, and that's a big if, that they're going to allow education of women, however, not mixed as it's been under the previous government, and with the full-on hijab and a burqa and everything, more women might actually get educated, because there are a lot of women in Afghanistan who are not getting educated because the classes are mixed, because their families are conservative, and their family are not sending them to be educated because they would be mixed with boys, for example, right?
Yeah.
So they're saying that maybe under the new regime of Taliban, maybe more women would actually get educated, because if you separate them, more families are willing to put their girls out. I don't know if that's true. I'm not saying if it's true.
I think that's a little bit of a stretch, because I mean, even before they didn't just have coeducational schools. I mean, they also had, like, everywhere, you know, even here in Toronto, you have all girls schools, you have all boys schools, and you got things like that too. So
those options are not as much. You know what I mean? Like, most options were mixed. So again, it's about the numbers. How many options do you have? Which one is close to you? If you have a lot more options that are not mixed, they're saying a conservative society like that might actually be more willing to send their kids to be educated. Again, I don't know. Okay, we'll see. Okay, this is just I'm not reporting what's going to happen. I'm just reporting what people are saying.
I kind of feel like there's going to be a lot of speculation about, you know, well, they said this, it could be different this way, but eventually it's going to turn out to be the same thing. If the Taliban if they have any kind of strategic or economic advantage to offer the world, then they're going to be able to get away with a lot. Like Saudi Arabia had oil to offer to the rest of the world, right? So that, because everybody wanted their oil, they got immunity. They could do anything they wanted to, ban women from driving, throw them in burqa. They do all kinds of human rights abuses to all of their people, you know, the religious minorities. But they knew that they were protected because they were offering oil to the rest of the world, and everybody needed their oil. And so there's a huge double standard for years and years and years and years. Sorry, this Taliban, if they can, they're not going to have oil. They can offer some kind of
minerals. Minerals.
Well, it can be minerals. It can be some sort of strategic advantage, strategic alliance, right? The U.S. is not in the region anymore. Yeah, like the U.S. is not in the region anymore, but the U.S. also does not want Afghanistan to become a safe haven for terrorists, because that's what led to 9/11 first, right? So now it is in their interest not to do that. So if the Taliban, for example, strategically aligns themselves with certain aspects of the U.S. interests in the region to prevent it from becoming that way. I'm not saying they're going to do it. This is just an example, right? If they do that, then they may get complete immunity. They may be able to treat people like crap in their own country, as long as, you know, they're providing this strategic advantage or alliance to someone outside. So that's another way that these things work.
So let me actually put that in something to maybe easier to look at. Okay, so when it comes to foreigners, what they care about when it comes to Afghanistan, and then when it comes to Afghans themselves, right? So let's say I think the three things that people keep touching on what is in the strategic interest of the countries around Afghanistan. And again, this is mostly countries around Afghanistan. Like a lot of people are talking about, oh, what about, are we going to have a refugee crisis again, like Syria? Oh, well, actually, that's one of the patron concerns, so I'm going to leave that there. But I think the most immediate effects are going to be felt by countries around Afghanistan, rather countries in Europe or in North America. And these countries are going to be the things that keep being mentioned. Is three things. One is the gas pipeline that is going to be potentially going through Afghanistan, and what the effect that's going to have for India, for Pakistan, for Iran. And Uzbekistan and some other countries, and Russia, right? That's the gas pipeline that a lot of people are talking about. Radical groups that are now going to maybe have a safe haven in Afghanistan, and the spillover effect in the surrounding countries. That's something. And the third thing is the minerals, right? So the minerals, the radical groups that might grow out of Afghanistan, and the gas pipeline. So those are the three things that the surrounding countries care about. When it comes to the people in Afghanistan, the main things that people are talking about is security, freedoms, and economics, right? So the current understanding is that maybe security is going to go up, freedoms are going to go down, and economics is so the tiebreaker is going to be economics, right? And the thing when it comes to economics is that if the economics crashes, the Taliban might be able to do the blame game on the Europeans or North American countries who are not legitimizing it, or like freezing its assets, or not, cutting the aid, cutting trade. So Taliban is like, you know what, like these people are not. You're muted, Ali.
Or they may say, like, we inherited this from the war that happened, so it's not our fault. We're doing our best to do this recovery, but it's not, like, this came from external sources. So it's pretty easy to blame economic woes on, especially if you've been through 20 years of war, right? It's pretty easy to blame it on the occupier.
One thing I want people to be careful of in the next decade or so, as into when people come to judging what's happening in Afghanistan, is that you're going to have examples for any narrative. Okay, so everybody, like, if people who think this was a bad idea, people who think this was a good idea, people who think Taliban is not going to provide security, people who think Taliban is actually not as bad as they thought, or people that thought, like, oh no, it was worse than they thought. There's going to be enough examples for everybody to show that they were right. Okay, so you have to, instead of, if you look at these, like, you're going to find examples of Taliban, like, I don't know, killing poets or comedians, or doing massacres, and then also you're going to have people having you examples of, actually no, women actually doing better because now there's more security. Look at this place, that place, maybe like women are safer because sexual harassment has gone down. Everybody's going to have something to point to show that they were correct. So you're going?
No, I'm saying that's a big advantage, right? And this is something like, for example, very similar situation with MBS in Saudi Arabia. Same kind of thing happened. People are like, oh, he's bringing in reforms, but he's also killing journalists and chopping them up. And there's always something terrible that he's doing. There's always some good stuff he's doing. He's killing people in Yemen, but at the same time, he's allowing more economic investment and opening up movie theaters. And there's
I'm trying not to talk about MBS because that would, like, make me not be able to stop talking. So I'm just not. I'm gonna act like you're not talking about MBS.
Okay, just act like I'm not talking about it, but I'm just saying a parallel. This is what happens. I'm not talking about what we think about him. I'm just saying that generally the narrative was, when this guy rose up, people were writing op-eds, wow, this could be a real big change. And then there were other people saying that, no, this is terrible. He's just, he's fooling everybody. But that strategically, that kind of strategic ambiguity really, really helped him, right? In that sense. So the Taliban.
Yeah, my point is, like, don't try to judge what's happening based on examples that is coming out of Afghanistan.
Right.
Like, you need to try to come up with an overall, more, better analysis that looks at everything and takes everything into account, and puts these, examples of what's happening into a larger picture, and,
100%.
come up with a better analysis. Yeah.
Let's go to we have less than 15 minutes left.
Wait, I have to just one more thing to add, because I think this is something that people are not talking about, and it's happening as we speak. And by the time that you listen to this, things might have already changed a lot, because the Taliban just started, like, attacking the Northern Alliance, led by Ahmad Massoud, in the Panjshir Valley, and that's another group. Like, we keep talking about ISIS-K as, like, anti-Taliban, but the main anti-Taliban group in Afghanistan right now is the Northern Alliance. The difference, so the Panjshir Valley has been somewhere that the Taliban has always had a hard time capturing to become fully in control. Like, right now as we speak, the Taliban is not fully in control of all of Afghanistan. The Panjshir Valley is still left. This is the smallest province in Afghanistan, but it's a place that the Taliban has always had a problem. Even before, it was, Ahmad Massoud's father managed to keep that place away from away from Taliban, from a full Taliban takeover, all the way until 2 days before the 9/11 attack. So basically, Taliban managed to have full control over Afghanistan for, like, 2 days, I guess, right? So, but now his son is doing the same thing over there, and the Taliban had a call with him. Maybe they were trying to convince him to, like, bend the knee, not bend the knee.
King of the North.
Because that would be shirk. So just join the Taliban and just accept the Taliban takeover. And this Ahmad Massoud, like, no, go screw yourself. We will never submit to the Taliban, right? So the Taliban, like, okay, I guess we're attacking. We killed your father. Now we're gonna attack you. So they started moving against the Panjshir Valley. And today, I think it was today or yesterday, the attack started, right? And both sides have lost people. So I don't know, by the time that you're listening to this, if that war, where is this going to, like, is this going to be something that is going to end tomorrow, or is this going to be a forever war for another 10 years? This is the main resistance right now in Afghanistan against the Taliban. the difference between Ahmad Massoud and his father, which was Ahmad Shah Massoud. Shah means king, so this is literally, he was literally the king in the north, right? This is like right. So the difference is that when Ahmad Shah Massoud had the Panjshir Valley, he had like an opening to Tajikistan for it to be supplied and everything. So he had like an opening for to be able to like maintain supplies and everything. But right now, unfortunately, his son is fully surrounded from all corners. So he has a major disadvantage right now compared to his father. So he might, we don't know what's going to happen. So, but that's something to look at. But anyways.
Yeah. So let's do this. Let's go to Patreon questions. So as we do, we're going to go to our Patreon and the people who posted the questions there, who may or may not have been able to join us live. So they always get the first priority. So the first question is from...
If you're a patron, you'd on Patreon, if you can't join live, if you can't be here live with us, you could still send us your questions ahead of time, and we will answer your questions even if you can't join live with us. So again, link in the description. If you want to be a patron, you could become a patron and support the show, and at the same time, make sure your questions get answered even if you can't join. So we have 2 patron questions. Go on.
We do. The first one's from Vasuntara Majithia. Good question. The economy in Afghanistan is crashing. Do you think the economy can be stabilized under the Taliban, or are the Afghans doomed to poverty?
It really depends on this is the compromise we're talking about. This is why the Taliban is forced to do some compromises, because it really depends on how much they're going to be able to maintain trade with other countries, right? And which countries are going to, how many countries are going to find it in their best interest to make sure that the Afghanistan doesn't collapse under the Taliban, right? Like I think like China would be in China's best interest. It would be in Iran's best interest. So it really depends. It also depends on United States. Like United States right now has a lot of Taliban, Afghanistan's money is frozen, and people are like can't even get their own money from the bank. So this is like really. In fact, Taliban could right now go on a propaganda and like, yeah, guys, the reason why you can't get your money is because the United States has frozen your money. So this is, I don't know. But again, if United States unfreezes that money, a lot of people are like, oh, great job, United States of America. You just gave money to a group that you consider as a terrorist group. So it's just like, I don't but at the same time, if they don't unfreeze their money, they're Afghans right now that they like, that's our money in the bank that we can't have access to, and we need to eat, and that's our money. Can you please unfreeze our money? Thank you very much. So it really depends on. So because of the human cost associated with freezing all this money, there's going to be both pressure on United States to keep freezing the money because it's Taliban is now in Afghanistan as a terrorist group, and also because of the human cost of it, it's going to be a lot of pressure on them to unfreeze that. So, but at some point, and there's going to be a lot of aid is now going to be frozen to Afghanistan, and we don't know when that's going to come back. It's going to be very hard for the Taliban to be able to maintain all the infrastructure and everything without that aid continuing to come in. Without also a lot of the economic cost that we're going to see is going to be not because of the money that has been frozen and not because of the trade that is not going to be there for a while. A lot of it is also going to be because of the brain drain, right? Some of the most intelligent, most skilled Afghans have just left Afghanistan, and they will continue to leave Afghanistan in the foreseeable future. And it's going to be really hard for the Taliban to, I don't know, maintain, run this whole thing without the people who know how to do it. So that's also going to be devastating. I honestly, I don't really know. The other way of looking at it is also, because of now China, I don't know, maybe there's going to be a lot of interest for China to come in and do deals with the Taliban with regards to the minerals, and the pipeline might kind of come in, and that eventually might help Afghanistan. Yeah. So it's really the effects of which one of these is going to happen, and the effect. I don't think even economists can right now calculate how much each one of these is going to have an effect. So it's really, so I could just tell you the this list of things that I know is going to have an effect positively on Afghanistan's government, Afghanistan's economy, and negatively. But which one is going to be stronger? I think it's anyone's guess.
Okay. Nicholas Swihart. Yeah, I'm with all of that. I was with you from the beginning. So, Nicholas Swihart saying, I've heard people compare the coming refugee crisis to what was happening in Syria in 2015. Does this comparison make sense? So this is, there's nothing that's exactly a perfect analogy for this or perfect precedent. I think there are aspects of this that are similar to that refugee crisis, and there are a lot of things that are not similar to that, right? Like these, the Afghan refugees, like this was a war where the US was there. So that the US is much more willing to protect these refugees and to welcome them in a much more warm way than what happened to the Syrian refugees who were fleeing like a local threat, right? Which was ISIS. So there's an element of responsibility, Western responsibility here, and that conscience is kind of driving it. So that's one of the key differences. But when it comes to the large number of refugees that will actually leave and that will go to these other countries, and they may go to Europe, and a lot of them are obviously coming to the US too. And the US, again, they were actually picking these people up, evacuating them, bringing them to the US, giving them special visas, and then fix it later. They're going to fix it later and figure out what their status is going to be. And so this is happening, and there's no controversy over it. Right. So that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, I think we should like separate putting it in different compartments when we're talking about this. Like we have which countries we're refugees to which countries we're talking about, and also are we talking about controlled refugees or uncontrolled, right? Like are we talking about, because like when we're talking about the controlled, like planned refugees that are coming in, those actually have such a low impact compared to like a lot of people who want to fearmonger. Like when, for example, if Canada like is allowing, I don't know, 20,000 Afghans in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the number? I forgot. But that's like, I don't know. Like, I think a lot of people don't understand how insignificant of a number that is and how low of an effect that's going to have on Canada, right? So, but the thing, the refugee crisis, like if you want to refer to a crisis, those are not like when United States or Canada, let's say, I don't know, 20,000 50,000 people, and those are not going to have that much of an impact. And I know you might come up with an anecdotal evidence to prove that it's not true, but I'm talking about like if you think about it holistically.
Yeah.
But when it's the unplanned refugees that you are not able to stop, those might have bigger effects on a country's economy or its politics. And if we're talking about that, then we have to talk about different countries, right? Because the immediate effect of that kind of refugee is going to be mostly on countries like Iran and Pakistan. I mean, it's not going to be, it already is right now as we're speaking. Like there's a lot of refugees like from Afghanistan going into Iran illegally, and Iran's government is trying to take a hold of that. But the interesting thing is that all these Afghans going to Iran, a lot of them are not trying to, like some of them end up staying in Iran because they want to, and most of them not because they want to. A lot of them were planning to go to Turkey, and I think Turkey has built a wall between right now. So that the whole flow that we had before from like different countries to Turkey and then from Turkey to Europe, Turkey has put a stop on that. Like I don't know how effective that's going to be, but like
building walls works.
Yeah. But I don't know exactly how effective that's going to be, but I think that Turkey this time is like prepared to make sure that doesn't happen. So maybe it's going to be cut there. So maybe it's not going to, again, I don't know, like we'll see if this is correct or not, but maybe it's going to stop at the borders of Turkey. So Europe is not going to feel that the same way that they did from Syria. So I don't know about that, but the effect of this refugee, if you want to call it a refugee, a refugee crisis is going to be felt mostly by surrounding countries rather than, again, I don't know. It all depends on how good Turkey is going to be at maintaining its borders. Yeah,
it's actually one of the interesting things about this is like this has happened before when there was a huge refugee crisis and these refugees ended up coming to Pakistan, and that is what actually ended up Islamizing a lot of Pakistan and the madrasas and everything that were established there. So, people, they came to Afghanistan. With them came all these Russian weapons, because this was the remnants of the war against the Soviet Union, and a lot of drugs. And it was a big crisis at that time when the US cut and ran. There's a lot of bitterness about it. So it'll be interesting to see if that repeats itself. I don't think it's going to repeat itself in the exact same way. But
yeah,
let's see what.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it right now. Turkey tightens security measure, builds wall along its border with Iran. So again, that's the common route that you go from Afghanistan to Iran, from Iran to Turkey, and from Turkey to Europe. And I think like this might not happen this time the way it happened before because of extra security measures. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Susanna, 11:26 p.m. Which parts of the current failures that we see can be correctly attributed to Biden as opposed to what Trump was actually responsible for? So the thing is, all 4 administrations are responsible for things. The Bush administration for getting in the first place and going in and actually doing this thing, right? Then there was the who came after Bush? The Obama administration, right? The Obama administration, they did the surge. They added more personnel into the country, the troop surge. They thought it was going to work, and they knew that it wasn't working. Like at that point, during the Obama administration, they knew that this wasn't working out as planned. This was pretty much a failure, but they didn't really have the balls to withdraw. They wanted to stay in there. They kept on talking, but they wouldn't withdraw. Then Trump came in, and then Trump negotiates this deal. He starts working with the Taliban, and he starts taking their promises as if they're going to actually fulfill it. And he talks about how bad the Iran deal was, but he actually gave them quite a bit of leeway and latitude.
He released 5,000 Taliban from jail.
Opened the jails and let the people. That's where ISIS-K came out of. Like a lot of ISIS-K people.
Well, no.
A lot of them were prisoners.
No. The ISIS-K people were released by Taliban, but those 5,000 were actually Taliban. The 5,000 that Trump released were Taliban. Mm-hmm. And we have a picture of Pompeo with the Taliban leader. And if you had that picture of Biden with the Taliban leader, the right-leaning people would like forever show you that picture right now.
But what I'm saying is, so this is all these 3 previous administrations had their own screw-ups that were absolutely massive. And then Biden comes in, and then he has this screw up where, he screwed up the way that they withdrew from Afghanistan, which is a bad screw up. But the question, I think the correct question, Susanna, here is that who deserves credit for eventually doing the right thing? And it is, I know this is like an unpopular opinion, but Biden actually does. He did the one thing that none of the others did. This bad stuff he did, the bad stuff that Biden did, the stuff that wasn't good, the failure aspect, all 3 administrations have done it, and many of them have done it much worse. But ultimately, he ended the war. He got everybody out of there. So
such a oh my God. Okay, you are incapable of criticizing Biden.
We criticized him a lot last time.
Let me talk now. So you didn't answer the question. You fixed the question instead of answering.
Okay.
But okay, so I have actually. So I was
before. Let me finish. Let me clarify one thing. It's a clarification before you go on. Is that which can be correctly attributed to Biden is the withdrawal, the way he did the withdrawal. Absolutely, that's what I'm saying.
Well, actually, okay. So, and can I go on it?
Now you can,
yeah. So the thing is that but it's really I know it's impossible for Biden not to have made mistakes. Okay. It's hard to pin down what mistakes he have made because we don't like anything that we say like, okay, he did this and this was the cost. Okay. We don't have a lab to show that if it was differently, the cost wouldn't have been higher. Right. So for example, like a lot of people saying this should have been planned more ahead of time. Right. But then the counter argument to that is that if the exit was planned more ahead of time, the exit would have been longer and the chaos would have lasted longer, right? And I don't know if that's true, but it's almost impossible to tell whether you did this and here's the cost. Like, okay, the alternative might have been cost there, okay? So I've been trying to figure out, I'm pretty sure he has made mistakes, but it's hard to pinpoint which those mistakes are. But I think the only thing that I can criticize Biden's administration for, with it being almost certain that yes, this is the definite mistake here that should have been done much better, is the speed at which the processing of the exit of American allies was done, right? So the process in which the people who aided Americans, the process, their exit, like the paperwork, right? I can't find any excuse for why there was no more people. You could argue like the reason why they weren't being done, the exit itself wasn't being done earlier, it was because if you had done that, it would have started the process and it would be signaling the Americans going out earlier, and this chaos would have dragged on longer. But at least all the paperwork, all the coming up with a plan on how exactly the exit is going to look like, and if this happens, where they're going to exit, what exactly the message of communication going to be, and telling them if A happens, do this, if B happens, do this. Like that should have been done. There is no excuse for that planning not to have been there. So I think that would be the best criticism for Biden that we could have. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I agree with all of that stuff. I mean, this is just a thing. But I was just talking about the overall perspective. I know that right now. But anyway,
the overall perspective, like I completely agree that this was a mess of Bush, Obama, and Trump more than anyone else. But firstly, Bush. Like one person that is not being mentioned here for the main person that is responsible for all this is Bush, which is like, I think, okay, next question.
Okay. So D. Boudreau is asking, who has a bigger role in Afghanistan's future, Pakistan or China?
Well, you speak as if they're two separate things.
I was thinking the same thing. China's a bigger economic power. I mean, clearly. There's the strategic advantages. Pakistan's like virtually a failed state. We're on the verge of becoming one. But they are totally aligned. I mean, everything that China wants to do, Pakistan will do. Like Pakistan will go around talking about Islamophobia all over the world and talking about how, the French, we should get rid of all the French diplomats in the country because, they're Islamophobic and all this stuff. And when they ask him about the Uyghur genocide, in the Uyghur Muslim genocide in China, he's like, well, I trust China and what they tell me because obviously they're basically China's bitches. So, it's they're the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, Pakistan will at least like strategically, Pakistan to China is what Taliban is to Pakistan, right? So I don't know, we'll see. But I mean, directly, which one has a bigger role? I think directly it's going to be Pakistan because we're talking Taliban, and Taliban is a Pakistan. It's more of a Pakistani thing than an Afghan thing.
It's a Pakistani invention.
This Pakistani invention is now ruling over Afghanistan. So you would say it's mostly Pakistan.
Yeah. So it's 11:45 from Susanna. What do you think of the potential for Turkey to help operate the Kabul airport? Ooh. Yeah,
that's very interesting. Like I keep on like, why are they? Like Turkey is like for the past like couple of now it's like months now, it's like, hey, can we manage the airport? No, okay. And then they're like every few weeks pass, like, hey, can we manage the airport? Like, oh no, okay. And now they're back again, like, guys, can we manage your airport? I'm like, what are you? What is this Turkey's obsession with all managing?
But what is it? Why do they want to do it? What is it?
I think they just want to have like a role there. Like I'm trying to understand it. Like
it's gotta be something more.
Well, I mean, okay, so I think the Taliban is going to have a hard time managing the airport. Like this is like, because managing an airport is beyond just, hey, here's security, right? There's like operations and like, I don't know, air traffic. And I think Taliban is like, I don't know, like we don't know how to do this, right? So I think Turkey is like just trying to find ways to just be part of the picture here. And I think they can't find any ways to be part of the picture. And this is the only way they found, like, we can do the airport. Like, hey, we're the Taliban. We know you suck at this. So, like, I think they want to have some relationship with the Taliban to be part of this, to find an excuse to, have talks and be useful to Taliban. So the Taliban, because Taliban right now feels like, God damn it, we need the Islamic Republic of Iran. We need like some connections to the Pakistan. We need connections to China. And, the current, like Erdogan is like somebody like right now that wants to feel like within the Islamic world, they are always there. Like they want to be like, yeah, we're a major power play that have our hands everywhere. So you need to talk to us as well. if you want anything to happen, like we're everywhere. Like they want to be the Sunni version of the Islamic Republic of Iran, right? So this whole idea of this Afghanistan happening and then being completely out of the picture, I think it just doesn't sit well with them. So they just want to have some influence there. This is my understanding. I don't know. I don't know why else would they want to be there, right?
Yeah. So yeah, another
D is saying in the live chat maybe they have an airport kink. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so Susanna's clearing up the 20,000 spots in Canada. She's saying, yes, Armin, it is 20,000 resettlement spots in Canada. I believe roughly 2,000 have already landed in Canada, possibly another 1,700 of those spots filled. So got it. Thanks,
Susie,
Susanna.
with all the
info. She's there. That's what she does.
Yeah.
So music guy at 20. He's saying what? So I think this might be the last question. So because we're kind of a little over time as well. So what do you think about the new?
Let's do that. Let's do all the Patreon questions. Like we'll do it fast.
There's I think that's the last one. I'm literally.
No, there's one more by music guy again. Yeah.
Oh, there is. Okay. So he's saying, what do you think about the new Taliban's usage of social media? The old Taliban would have banned the internet. Does this show change? Have they really changed their ways?
They're becoming more strategic. And they're getting really good at it. Like, guys, when it comes to their social media, it wasn't that they're now using it. Their accounts were there ready to go for after the takeover.
Guys,
they had advanced planning. They had all the social media accounts. They were like opening them and getting followers ready to go for right after the takeover. Like this was like way ahead. Like, and they're so good at it. I mean, if you look at their tweets, they're actually they're funny. They're clever. They're like. They say like they seem like we're cool with the kids at all. Like they're like I don't know. Yeah. They're like very. They know they're not saying like cringy things. They seem to like somehow figured out how to do social media. I don't understand. Like,
I want to say one thing about this question, music guy, is when the old Taliban, there was no social media. They had the internet. But there was no social media. There was no Facebook. There was no Twitter. There was
But they were against. No. So I think what music guy is saying, they considered internet and TV. They considered TV haram. So the Taliban, they used to say like even television is haram, is now using social media, like everything technology.
No, but that's my point. So they banned the internet at the time, right? Because there wasn't. Now they want to use the internet because of social media. It's because social media exists now that they want to use it because they know it's a powerful tool. It's a way of broadcasting whatever they want to around the world. So they can do that.
There's a lot of comments right now by a lot of people about the fact that Taliban has accounts on Twitter. And the U.S. president was banned on Twitter, so there's a lot of people commenting on that.
Yeah, well,
so
but
that's another conversation. I'm not saying that. Yeah, I'm not saying Trump shouldn't have been banned. So
if the Taliban, I'm sure if they try to incite violence and things like that, they're going to be banned too. But they haven't done it yet.
Yeah, on the platform, you mean?
On the platform,
because they do incite violence.
Of course, yes. If they incite, exactly, it has to be on the platform.
Yes.
Like when you do it on the platform, that's it. That's a no-no. So the music guy's also saying maybe they want the Taliban to manage the border so they don't get lots of refugees. Maybe who wants to?
Yeah, no,
Turkey?
The Turkey, no, because they're managing the airport. The airport is not the border, so that's a different thing, right? So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I will have to see what some other theories are on why the Turkey is like so obsessed with Kabul's Turkey right now. Kabul's airport. I said Kabul's Turkey. Kabul's airport. Like I don't know why they're so obsessed with that. But yeah, we'll see.
Last thing, Emmett Qureshi saying the old Taliban banned photography. The new Taliban is taking selfies. Times have changed. Yeah, they're taking selfies because of social media. It's like all of these people who were like no music and no imagery, no photography. Like all of these ultra-Islamic groups, they said that before social media came around. Now that social media came around, and they know it's a big weapon. They can't. That's what they're doing.
It's just too useful for them. That's why they can't do it.
They can't do it.
They're becoming. The Taliban. A lot of people who say Taliban hasn't changed at all. They're not paying attention. Okay, we're not saying if we're saying they've changed, it doesn't mean that they're just like rainbow and sunshine and they're great now and they're not conservative, they're not Islamic, they're not. No, we're not saying that, but they have changed. Like you can't say they're the exact same thing, right?
20 years.
They're a lot. They're a lot more strategic. They're much smarter with their politics. They're pragmatic, and this is why we have ISIS-K, as we say, because a lot of people are leaving them because like people wouldn't become disillusioned if they haven't changed. Like the people are leaving them in masses because they're more pragmatic.
There's a big difference between, like, if you think back to 9/11, before 9/11, that's the thing. There's a lot of people who are legal adults right now who weren't even born during 9/11. So the thing is, if you think back to before then, Islam was a very, 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 very protected thing. Like, nobody used to talk about it. Nobody used to criticize it. If you did, it was very, very dangerous. Like, remember the cartoons, Danish cartoons, that happened in 2006. Charlie Hebdo happened in 2015, right? So this is like, these are things, I know they're very recent, but Muslims around the world have become very, very desensitized to Islam being criticized in a way that they weren't before.
Yeah, I don't think that's comparable to Taliban because they're not desensitized.
And I'm just talking about, well, no, I think that it does affect them, right? There's been a whole generation. They're more comfortable with technology. They're more comfortable with social media.
Yeah, but the Taliban is far away from being desensitized to criticism. Like they will still like.
Yeah, inside. But I'm saying around the world, criticism, it has gone mainstream. It has gone mainstream more than anything else.
But not in Taliban. D is saying my social media account was disabled, but Taliban's is growing. This is a new low for me.
Well, Armin is banned from Twitter too, by the way.
Yes.
The Taliban's on Twitter, but Armin is not. So yeah, go figure. Guys, there you go. We should tweet that. The Taliban is on Twitter and Armin is not. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, please hit the like button. If you hit like, it helps feature us on YouTube and more people get to hear these podcasts. Subscribe. You hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get a notification every time we have a new video out. And we do have a lot of videos that come out every day. They're little clips, video clips from the conversations that you do here on your podcast app. And if you are listening to us on your podcast app, then please give us a rating. And if you're on iTunes, give us a rating, and that'll also tremendously helpful for us. And please do consider, if you like what you hear here, right? Please do consider going to patreon.com/SJME and becoming a patron. And you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, and you get 5 or 6 episodes of Secular Jihadists, and you are able to give your questions ahead of time before we do the stream and have them read first, or you can participate in the live chat and engage with us directly. So there's a lot of great perks to being able to do that.
And if you know anybody at Twitter that could like maybe help me unban my account on Twitter, because nothing I did was any violation of Twitter's community guideline, please email me at armin.navabi@gmail.com. Okay. Please help me. Like, if you guys know anybody at Twitter. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways. Okay, guys, thank you. Share. Don't. If you're listening to the audio version of this, please share this. It really helps us grow, like Ali said. And thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye. Be best.
The Secular Jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air, and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.